will you let everybody in?
Yep, just clicking the people in right now.
Okay. All set?
All set when you are.
Okay. Hi, Ken. Welcome to the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Thursday, April 22nd, 29th, 2021. This is a special meeting for a public hearing regarding the two special spring town meeting, Article 10 and 11 coming forward. And I see Peter's joined us. Hi, Peter. All right, so there's two articles. One is 10, which is the wetland bylaw amendment regarding Wareham Village 1 zoning. And the second one is a conditional exceptions. I know that we've had a meeting among ourselves, Conservation Commission, with Mr. Buckland explaining them, but I was hoping to have some people from the public here to have a talk on it. Is Mr. Sullivan on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If it's all right with everybody, I'd like to go for Article 11 first, which asks.
You're trying to be kind, thank you.
Yes, I know you want to get home for the football draft.
Yeah, I'm already in the basement getting ready, so.
Excuse me. Yes, Belly?
Hi.
Hi. All
Hi,
right.
guys.
So what we've had here is there's been an addition to section 4, number B. However, all exceptions shall be available for application to municipal projects related to replacement, repair, and maintenance of existing town roadways, facilities, installations, and fixtures. And to be honest, I heard a selectman say when this was being discussed, so we don't have to bring the repair to or the expansion of Onset Pier in front of conservation anymore. And that bothered me greatly. So, Mr. Sullivan, I know that you were involved with this addition to the bylaw. Can you talk to us about it, please?
Yeah, sure. So I think, there we go. So the simple thing is, Sandy, is just going over a couple of the projects we've had in the past. I don't see how a pier wouldn't go in front of conservation, but hey, I'm just the TA, so.
Well, it wasn't you that said it.
Hey, so Sandy, one of the things is, if you go back, I'm sure you probably understand the fortune we're spending on engineering. I'm looking at this. For example, county road repaving, that required a full notice of intent. Pilgrim Ave, the revetment, full notice of intent. Smith Ave, drainage improvements, full notice of intent. Murphy Street drainage repair, notice of intent. Yeah, so we're going through some of the main ones, even Main Street, that wasn't one of them, but just going through them. But I think what I've been hearing in the past is that the reason that we bring these in front of the Conservation Commission is because there is no alternative due to the bylaw, and that it would be unfair since the bylaw states such. So our idea is, let's help you out, make it easier on you.
Well, if I could, Sandy, just make a quick clarification on that. These projects came before the Concom because they were projects that proposed new structures and new features. And so therefore, they're not exempt projects in any way under either the state or the town bylaw. So that's the reason why they were required to come before the commission. What is exempt under both the state law and the town bylaw, because it's written in that way, are more typical maintenance items. Like, for example, there's many roads in town where they skim off the pavement and repave it. We've never required hearings for those sorts of projects. other sorts of things like fixing a catch basin that's existing, those typically, again, are exempt activities. But when there's new structures to be put in, those are ones that are just not exempt activities. And even if you were to vote this in terms of it passing at town meeting, it's still going to require a notice of intent because it's required under the state law.
So there's no problem with the Conservation Commission supporting this bylaw amendment then?
Well, that's up to the commission. It just doesn't, it's not really going to change a whole lot, I guess is what I'm trying to say in terms of the projects you mentioned.
Okay, so I think if we're hearing it, Sandy, from the conservation agent, there is no harm in approving this.
But what does it gain the town by putting it in there? Does it mean that you don't have to come before conservation if you're going to replace, repair, or maintenance?
Well, again, Sandy, I think it would depend on the project. It would
No, I'm
depend on the
trying-
type of the project.
Sorry, Dave, I want Mr. Sullivan to say this was put in here for a reason.
Right.
What were you trying to deliver with this? Why do we have it?
We have it because there are projects that our conservation bylaw requires probably a little bit more onerous than the state ones. It's also, frankly, I think there's times it could be stated that we don't need the NOI, and we're really not getting that deference. And by deference is probably the wrong word, but I'd say that courtesy. Everything we do, Sandy, everything we do is for the public, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when I heard before, well, that's unfair to taxpayers that are paying taxes, that they don't get sort of the same courtesy, but I look at it as a double whack for the taxpayers. Not only do they have to pay on their own properties, but now on top of that, the town as well. As you know, we're always tight on the budgets. So each one of these costs, the Pilgrim Ave was about $5,000 in engineering on just the notice of intent. Each one of these are several $1,000s. I could put the money into better things. We could get more projects done. One of the other things that's frustrated me in the past was projects getting stopped that really probably shouldn't have. When we have,
I know you're going to talk about the standpipe.
No, not even standpipe. Standpipe, that's fine. I have a bit of a disagreement as to where the coastal embankment starts, but hey, again, I'm just me. So I was really frustrated about when we had an issue with FERC and our dam over at Tremont Dam, and getting basically, I looked at it as a stop work order to just put into a plan things that we were already doing. Now, I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it, but it's things such as that. And I really think that we need to think about this for the community, because
So
go ahead, Sandy.
I'm concerned that there could very well still be I'm going to say one side versus another as to what type of documentation is needed in front of conservation to do some work within the wetland protection. I'm going to find that we're going to have some conflicts as to, yes, you must have, and no, I don't need. And I'm concerned that we're going to be facing that, because it's not quite clear to me at what point we don't need a notice of intent to do a repair to a road that's down by the water. This is not just putting hardtop into fixing a hole or something like that. So,
Excuse me, Sandy, that it is like now Bessie Park, we had to fill out an RDA for a sinkhole against the bulkhead, which should have been nothing. It should have been just fill that in. You know what I mean? We're trying to do something like that, and I had to pay to get an RDA done when it should have probably had no filing whatsoever. And that's the type of things I'm looking at on my end.
and see, now that bothers me, because even though we had an RDA, it wasn't done properly, and it's washing out underneath the pylon that didn't go all the way down, correct?
That was before. This is the repair for the sinkhole. We had to put a top, and that's holding up fine.
He's not talking about the original installation, Sandy. He's talking about there was a sinkhole there, and this was fixing that sinkhole.
Is there
Okay.
any way that you can get this around and say, go to Dave ahead of time and just, knock it off? He'll say yes, he'll say no, and then you'll be done with it?
And that's why we're here. Because we're not getting that courtesy.
Well, I think that's not really a correct statement. I think when we look at these things, I have to look at it as to what's required under the law and what isn't. And so when we look at these projects, as I said before, I'm not sure which project Derek was talking about when he first brought another one up. I didn't quite catch that, which one he was referring to, but these projects are required to have these applications under the state law. It's not like I'm just making this up and saying, oh, we're going to be hard on the town. I mean, that's just what's required.
Sandy, would you mind if I shared my screen for a moment?
Yeah, while you do that, let me say something. We'll do that, yes, but I can
Sure.
remember a project down at Rose Point. A road was repaired. It flooded someone's property, and then they had to come back for us with a full NOI. I mean, I can remember that one. It was done without any review by conservation. But okay, are you sharing?
Hold on, I'm just
Yeah.
going to click over on this. Okay, you should be all set.
Let me see if I can. Thanks, Dave. So when I'm talking about this, I'm looking at things such as what's happening at the Westgate property. And I'll start up at the top, if you will. This was an RDA to take that down, which essentially required nothing. And then there's going to be a deck built on there. That's the wee antic. The next, I see bridges going across there. Was there a full notice of intent for this?
There was a notice of intent for that.
So I see these things going on. Well, who paid for the engineering on that? Who did it?
Back when this was done, JC Engineering did that for us, and we paid them for it.
So when I look at this, I start seeing exceptions being made for conservation land and items.
Well, Derek, I think when you look at this, there's no alteration made to anything. It's an existing concrete foundation with a building on it. The building was taken off. There's no alteration to anything in terms of the land. So what would be something that would require that trigger? This is what you have to understand in terms of the work that's being done is what triggers whether or not a certain filing is required or it isn't.
I mean, I'm looking at a lot of these that are going in there and again, I think I'm seeing things happen in conservation land that I don't see allowed elsewhere. And again, it is getting frustrating. So what I'm trying to do is help it so that this, so that the town doesn't have to go through some of these battles. And I don't know how to do it. Do I bring the conservation? Do we bring the whole commission out on each one of these till we start getting on a roll? What do we do? If I hear if this doesn't solve anything, why did we even put this bylaw in if it's already covered on the state side? Why wouldn't we just fully exempt the municipality from this bylaw?
Okay, can Mr. Buckland speak to that since he submitted the article?
I submitted the article because there are exemptions available in the state law that are specified in the town bylaw that says they are not available. And the intent of this was to allow that the state exemptions would be available to the town.
Can you be specific as to what specific exemptions? Can you give us some examples?
I don't have examples. What I have is the bylaw that in front of you, which the section that I'm referring to and changed includes restriction against using exemptions available under the state wetlands law. And this turns those available to the municipal projects.
Right, and as I had stated previously, those are typically already called out in the bylaw. Just to back up, if I
Well,
may,
then why was it
Sandy,
written so to say that there was no, that those exemptions aren't available?
yeah, that's not true, because if you look in the bylaw, they list exemptions, which does talk about the town's ability to do certain things. But if I could just back up quick, Sandy, for a moment. The reason that language was put in place in the first place when the bylaw was first developed is because that language was drafted by our town council at the time, which was Copeland and Page. And they stated that that had to be put in there to differentiate between the town's bylaw and the State Wetlands Act. So that's how that language ended up being in there. But if you notice in the exemptions in the town bylaw, there are certain things that are listed and called out to ensure that certain things remain exempt, such as agricultural projects, routine maintenance for the town, for road repairs, things like that. So again, I'm not sure what specifically Ken is referring to, but if there's an example, then I'm certainly willing to want to hear what it is. And, you know, we're not trying to harm the town per se, but, you know, we're just trying to operate in a manner that's required under the law.
So Dave, would you mind pulling up the town exemptions from the Commonwealth laws?
I'll pull up the town bylaw so you can look at what is in that. Is that what you're asking?
No, the Commonwealth ones that you say coincide with that.
I don't have those up handy, but I can list out what those are. I have them in writing sort of in front of me.
Okay.
So there's really not a ton of exemptions. There's exemptions for agriculture, which wouldn't apply. There's exemptions for the repair and maintenance of existing utilities to serve the public, such as electric, gas, water, telecommunications, things of that nature. And again, as I stated, road repairs that are minor in nature, such as repaving and things like that. But for any new structures, there's no exemptions for that. That's what I'm trying to explain.
Hey, when you say, but I mean, you're saying new structures, but when we do new structures, you're trying to improve what's there. You know what I mean? It's really, you're not changing the road layout. You're not doing any of that nature. You're actually trying to improve things. So if we put something in there, you know, that's what don't make sense to me when you're doing something and you can't put in you know, to make it better, you know, a deep sump, say, for it doesn't overflow and go in. You know what I mean? Things of that nature.
No, I agree. And I think if it's something as simple as that for a catch basin or two where you're putting in a deep sump, that's fine. But when you're talking about a project like at Pilgrim Ave in Swiss Beach, where you're armoring a coastal bank with stone and everything, that's a project that absolutely requires a notice of intent and an engineered plan. It's
You know,
just,
and I look at something like that was like an emergency repair. You know, the road was collapsing and it's kind of an emergency repair. It had to be done, you know, and what we did, I don't think did any, you know, improve that banking, you know. That's the things that, you know, we're not out to kill the environment at all. We're trying to make these things right and make it safe for the public to travel down these roadways.
right. And I don't disagree with you at all. I didn't say the project ended up causing a problem. It worked out fine and you had an engineered plan to work with, and that's just what's required for a project like that.
I'm going to ask the commission if they have any questions. Michael,
Questions?
Carol,
No, no questions.
Elissa,
No.
Kwame,
No questions.
Denise.
No questions.
Is there anybody on the line that would like to ask a question regarding the Article 11?
Hey, Sandy, can I speak? Did you see me on here?
Come on.
No, but okay.
So I just kind of been listening back and forth between Derek and whatnot.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was having a problem with my computer, so I had to jump onto my iPad. I mean, it's kind of like it's a catch-22, because obviously as a town, we don't, if we can save money, obviously the goal is to save money, because we have tons of projects in town that require funding. But my concern from a commission standpoint is, we talk about, changing a bylaw to, make exemptions that might be available, might not be available, stuff that requires a notice of intent, because it's going to make things better. We see projects all the time from the community that, are issues, maybe they're emergencies, but they still have to go through the process. So if we make exceptions for one, my concern is that we're going to have to start making exceptions down the road for others. And I preach consistency from, start to finish, no matter what it is, whether it's the town, whether it's the people, whether it's us, it doesn't matter. We have to be consistent. So my concern is that if we were to support a change for this bylaw, what is going to stop us from having to support a bylaw change for something else that somebody from the community might bring to us? So that's my only concern, is that if we do it for one, we don't want to say we have to do it for another, but for the term of consistency that I am a firm believer in, I think it's a really sticky situation to be thinking about a potential change like that.
Okay, thank you. And Ron, I apologize. I didn't realize you were on, or I would have called your name.
That's okay.
I see Peter has unmuted himself. Did you have a comment, Peter?
Yeah, and it kind of goes to a little bit to Ron's point. See, I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I agree with Derek to the extent that the town should be entitled to some deference. And listen, I can remember probably the most egregious municipal maintenance department crime against the environment, I guess you could call it, back in 2002, when they managed to pretty much clear cut the Onset Bluffs from all the way around South Boulevard. And the town was forced to spend 60 grand, which was real money back then, hire an arborist to come in, replan the coastal bank. It got appealed by people. So there was this, a hearing with DEP, superseding order that basically upheld what Concom was doing. All this money spent, people went out there and planted, trees, shrubbery, this, that, and the other thing. And as soon as it grew up, the people came out of their houses at night and cut it back down again because they enjoyed the view. But anyway, I've been on the other side of the issue of the town screwing something up. And since then, I don't think the town has really done that. And yet the town's, let's put it this way, 2 years after that, I could still see a conservation commission, looking askance at municipal maintenance and maybe wanting to keep an eye on them. But they've had a pretty good track record, I think, of doing things. And I just, I would just like to see some latitude in some of the things that are doing here. I know, for example, something like putting the footbridge over the drainage ditch over at Swiss Beach. Does that require a notice of intent? I mean, is that something that can just be done? These are the things that I'm concerned about, are just sort of the smaller projects. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna, build a new road, you have to do something, especially with storm drainage. But I guess one thing begs the question a little bit is if the town is required when it does storm drain upgrades, the MS4, to install a slightly different or larger system, is that something that should come back before the commission? I mean, if it's a significant alteration, I would say yes. But if it's just a small one, I don't see why that requires an engineered plan and a notice of intent. So that's just my way of thinking on it.
And if we were, there wouldn't be enough money any place to pay for all the storm drains that need to be corrected. Now, I'm going to say that Swiss Beach path, that bridge, I don't know who built it. It's been there. And if you're noticing, it's altering the path of that drainage ditch. So it's probably it wasn't done with any approval. Someone put it there. No one's owned up to it. It stayed there because it is a safety reason for people to get across the ditch. but it should have been reviewed and approved before submitting it because I think it's doing damage, but that's off the topic, but maybe it's something that I'm honestly not sure what this change in the bylaw means to us. But maybe we sit together, several of us, and talk about potential projects the town is looking at and can come to a compromise as to what type of documentation is needed to support that change. Because that's just me, but I want going back. Is there anybody else on the line that would like to talk to this article? I'm seeing anybody, Dave?
Question, Sid.
There is
Yeah.
a, oh, wait a minute. No, that's just my cursor hand on somebody's
Okay.
square.
Elisa's got her hand up.
I do. I sort of mentioned before going to David and asking David if it needs, if something needs an NOI or an RDA. Is this sort of something you're suggesting, Sandy, that that they ask whether or not it's needed prior to having to pay the money for it and bring it up before the board and all that sort of thing?
Well, they go to Dave and he says, this is the bylaw and this is what is the state and town bylaws. And this is this is the plan you need. We do that now.
I will say, Sandy, and we'll never get anybody to put this in writing, but you know that between myself, Mr. Menard, we all talk with different communities in our area. We hear other things. I will tell you, we're listed as by far the most difficult to get things through. And we talk to them about what happens with municipal projects, and it's nowhere near what's happening with us. And maybe it is getting away with something they are. I don't know, but I can tell you we don't have the assets to continue down this sort of path. We really don't.
And I'm going to add something to that. I've been told that people, contractors come to conservation first because they're the easiest over all the other permitting boards, but so.
They might be kissing your butt, Sandy.
Can I get some clarification? If
Yes,
we
Carol.
change this bylaw, if we approve this, wouldn't the state bylaws just override our bylaws?
Yes,
If they
they
want
would.
to do a project, if the state says you can't do that without an NOI, us not having it in our bylaws is not going to change that. And if
Well,
they
it'll-
don't get an NOI, they'd be in violation.
Well, it doesn't, no, this couldn't supersede the Wetlands Protection Act. But what it would do is exempt the town out from as Ken said, what's banned in the local bylaw or requires, certain activities in the local bylaw.
Well, I haven't heard anybody give a specific anything that's in the local bylaw that is not covered under the state bylaw. What specifically is in our local bylaw that you want changed that's not covered under the state bylaw?
Who would like to take that one?
Ken's got that one, I think.
The exemptions that are available under the state law, and there's a list of them in the wetlands regulations. And those are not available under the local bylaw because of this section.
What exemptions specifically?
We keep
There's a
asking.
list of them. I don't have them off the top of my head.
Dave, what's the CMR on that? Why don't we just pull it up and go through it real quick? I mean, we've got interested folks here. The draft's not starting for another hour and a half, so I'm good.
Yeah, well, sure. The 310, it's 310 CMR 10.0. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Hold on.
And Derek, were you surprised that I knew the draft started at 8?
I know, Sandy. But yeah,
No, the draft started 3 hours ago because you have to get ready for it.
that's right. I was going to say
You
you
can't-
got into beverage.
Listen, I need the beverages. I got to have the draft board out. I got to be ready to go because you never know. I mean, I got to get on the phone and, and find out what's going on in the war rooms to figure out if I need to change my board.
That's
So
Yeah.
it's not just show up at 8 o'clock. I mean, you're not ready to go if you show right up at 8 o'clock.
And ESPN has been covering it constantly for the last 3 hours.
I think they've been covering it for weeks.
And Ron, you gotta make sure the kids' bellies are really extra full so they get sleepy on you.
Exactly. I mean, I don't have much time. I'm leaving at 4 a.m. to go to Maryland for a cheer competition. So I got to hope that, Belichick doesn't drag this out for us. Don't break our hearts in the first round. If you're going to draft up, just draft
He'll
up.
trade down and stockpile picks,
Dave, are you ready?
just like always.
I'm trying to pull this up here as we're speaking. I think I have it, but the one problem with the wetland regs is they don't list things typically right in one nice little section for everything. But let me just see if I can
That would
find
be too easy, Dave. That would be way too easy.
You're talking about the state.
What's easy with the state?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Except when they want your money. It's easy for them to come and get it.
Oh, yeah.
Dave, isn't it under 10.02?
it's 310 CMR 10.0 is the main regs, and I'm just kind of pulling this up here.
But under 10.02, there's some of the exemptions are listed.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at right here now.
Yeah, I tried to control F it and it wasn't working.
Because that would be, once again, too easy.
All right, I'm going to pull up or attempt to share what I have here. Hopefully this will work okay. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. If you scroll down, you get to this section right here, number 2, where it says the following minor activities, provided that they comply with 310 CMR 10.02, are not otherwise subject to regulation under the Act. So this lists some basic things: unpaved pedestrian walkways less than 30 inches in width, fencing, provided that it does not constitute a barrier to wildlife, vista pruning, provided the activity is located more than 50 feet from the mean annual high water line within a riverfront or from a bordering vegetated wetland, whichever is further. Plantings of native tree species, the conversion of lawns to uses such as decks, sheds, patios, pools, the conversion of impervious area to vegetated surfaces. Let's see. Activities that are temporary in nature and have negligible impacts and are necessary for planning, such as doing perk tests, monitoring wells, borings, things like that. Let's see, installation of utility poles. Here we go, let's see.
Installation of underground utilities.
Installation of directly embedded utility poles and associated anchors along existing paved or unpaved roadways, private roadways, driveways, and their existing maintained shoulders. Let's see.
So these are the things that are already allowed under state bylaw.
Yeah, installation of underground utilities within existing paved or unpaved roadways and private roadways, driveways, provided all work is conducted within the roadway or driveway. Installation and repair of underground sewer lines within existing paved, unpaved roadways. Installation of new equipment within existing or approved electric or gas facilities when such equipment is contained entirely within a developed, disturbed, existing fenced yard. So that's more for existing yard areas. installation of access road gates at public or private road entrances. So, I mean, if you're seeing something that jumps out at you that speaks to some of the projects that you're looking at that we've discussed, I'm not seeing it so far. Here's one. If you look at item P, pavement repair, resurfacing, and reclamation of existing roadways within the right-of-way configuration, provided that the roadway and shoulders are not widened, no staging or stockpiling of materials, all disturbed road shoulders are stabilized within 72 hours, and no work on the drainage system is performed, other than adjustments or repairs to respective structures within the roadway. And then Q is the repair or replacement of an existing or lawfully located driveway, servicing not more than 2 dwelling units, blah, blah, blah. So again, the kind of thing that I just described, we don't require filings for item P, if you will. We haven't been asking for that, but when there are projects that require or propose new structures, then yes, we do, because that's not an exempt activity.
So changing the bylaw would not change the fact that the state requires this, and we'd still have to spend the money for it. The town would still be on the hook for having just pay for engineering for projects that don't fall under these exemptions. Even
That's
if we
right, and
change
I
our
think
bylaw.
that's right, and I think what Dave mentioned earlier, in the case where you might have a catch basin, and you want to make it into a deep sump catch basin, those are things that I don't think requires a notice of intent, and maybe doesn't even require any filing if it's that simple. But again, some of the projects that we have required notices for are far beyond that type of work.
Okay.
Can you bring that down a little bit for the vegetation? Because there's like a thing like on the bluff, There was,
Other way.
I was
The other
only
way,
allowed to go come down. Where it was only
Right,
allowed to
stop.
like 10 feet high.
And
That crew was cut up 15 feet because of the trucks. You know what I mean?
Am I in the
That type
spot
of
you're
thing.
looking for?
come down from the top towards the top.
no, right there. You're talking about
Okay.
section N, vegetation
Where it
cutting
said
for
right
road
there, it said
safety.
drive safety, but I was only allowed to cut 10 feet through the commission, high and on my notice of intent.
Are you talking about, Dave, for what you were talking about for vista pruning?
I'm
Or are you talking about
the
something different?
section, from the pump station to the bridge, Wayne Sellers was cutting. You went out there. We're only allowed to go 10 feet when he was trying to go 13.6 because the trucks were hitting the trees on the bludgeon edge of the road.
I'm not sure if I think when we did the site walk, we talked about a certain height that we wanted to maintain in terms of vista pruning. If there was a safety issue for something else, we talked about being able to clear around street lights and signs, and if there was a branch hanging that was going to hit a vehicle, then certainly that could be removed. But when we were talking about the 10-foot height, it was just a general vista pruning issue we were talking about, not to not be allowed to cut for safety purposes. And one of the things I had mentioned to them is because they were doing beyond what you're describing. They were actually cutting vegetation on the bank itself, is what I stopped them from doing. And I may have also mentioned the height issue because we were talking about the vista part, not for safety, but it's certainly, if there's a safety concern, then that has to be addressed.
What about the next sections with the stormwater systems, Dave? Next section.
Sandy, I gotta get going here. Interesting discussion.
Okay,
I'll talk to you later.
Derek,
yeah, so Peter, sorry.
scroll
Peter,
down
if-
further, Derek. Is that what you're asking
Yeah,
me
I'm
to go?
looking at C and D for the stormwater stuff.
Sandy, you saying something to me?
Yeah, I need to talk to you about VF of Wareham Village 1. And I can talk to you offline on that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, aye.
I thank you, Peter.
Yeah, so
Stormwater
this section here talks about stormwater systems that were designed for subdivisions. In other words, when subdivisions are built, they're required to have a stormwater system, and some of those over the course of time turn into almost what people would think of as wetlands. And so what this is designed to talk about in this section is to say that those are not to be considered wetlands if they were built after a given year. But this has nothing to do with, you know, new structures for stormwater systems like what was put in at Bessie Park, for example. So that's what this is referring to, because there was an issue with some people trying to regulate, not me, Derek, by the way. There was some people trying to regulate these stormwater ponds as wetlands. And so this language was put in to clarify that those were not to be regulated if they were built, you know, after a certain point.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, does that answer?
Yeah,
You-
no, that was good. Thank you.
And you know, again, I'd like to just go back to Derek and Dave. I try and would want to work with you guys as much as possible. It's just sometimes I'm in a position too where I have to be careful because of what happens when people see things like what went on at the Bluffs years ago. That's an extreme case, but nevertheless, people there just called the state directly. They didn't even call me to talk to me about it. They just called the state directly, and the state came in and shut the whole thing down and made a big deal out of it. So there's not just me looking at some of these things. And so that's why I have to, you know, not trying to be hard on the town per se, but when I think it's a case where it's very obvious that there should be a notice of intent, then that's what I'm saying needs to be done. Not because I'm trying to burden the town, but I certainly, you know, welcome working with either you and or Dave. I've tried to do that as much as possible, but unfortunately, I think there's just going to be times where we disagree on what should happen. And, you know, I'm just operating in my role and, you know, not trying to, like I said, be hard on anybody, but just trying to do what I think the job requires.
Okay. If there's nothing else on this, Mr. Bichette, I would like to, at our May 5th meeting, put in an agenda item to talk about discussion and vote on these two articles. I think it would be important to be able to say to the body at Springtown meeting, special Springtown meeting, what the stand is on conservation for these two. So if you could add it to the agenda, I would appreciate it.
I will do that.
Thank you. Is there anything else to be said about Article 11? If not, we can go to Article 10.
So Sandy, is this basically, you're coming around that the state has certain exemptions and our town has other exemptions, and that the feeling from David that I'm getting is that the exemptions from the state are there already, and our Wareham exemptions are, or we're not, we're, you know, where am I pulling this together? Where is this?
Are you asking me that or Sandy?
Sure, I'll ask you, Dave. Why not?
Dave.
Well, again, I'll just go back to what I said earlier. When the whole thing was drafted in the first place, that language was put in as recommended by our then town council. You know, we didn't come up and say, we think this should be in here. They said to us, this should be in here, and that's why the language was included. Now, I'm going to pull up real briefly, if it's okay, pull up the town bylaw to show you what the exemption states in there, if that's okay.
Mhm.
Yep. Derek, who was combing your beard the other night?
That was Maggie.
Aha.
She,
I thought that was so cute.
yeah, we refer to her as the sassy one. Yeah, she's,
For those that are missed it on the BOS meeting, she came up and she was combing his beard.
she's my fancy girl.
There you go.
Nora's playing around in the mud, but Maggie's got all her dresses on and stuff.
So in the bylaw currently, this is what exists for exceptions. And so the first one talks about some of the things we've already talked about, which is maintaining existing utilities and all that. The second one talks about normal road maintenance activities, catch basin cleaning, road repair, street sweeping, performed by municipal maintenance. Now, that's not limited just to those, but there are certain other things, obviously, that would be considered normal maintenance. And so there's currently an exemption for that. Again, it doesn't include new structures because it's just not something that was ever written in as an exemption. And then it goes on to talk about some of the other things that are not really related to the town.
Dave, and thank you. I appreciate that. On number 2 in the 310s, it says activities conducted to maintain, repair, or replace, but not substantially change or enlarge. Is that substantially change or enlarge, or is that basically substantially change or substantially enlarge an existing lawfully located structure or facility? So in other words, if you had a parking lot, you had to shore up the outside of it, and it was, I'm making up you had to do 6 inches on the whole side of it to basically shore the thing up. Is that substantially changing or enlarging it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it is. So those are the sorts of things that I think we would have to evaluate and then come to a conclusion. So certain minor things like that, I would say no. But certain other things, depending on the scope,
Right.
like, again, the Pilgrim Ave roadway thing is just an example I'll use. That's a significant project and a significant change. It was a necessary project, and we didn't obviously not approve it.
Yeah.
But that was a case where you needed to have a notice of intent because you were doing work in a flood zone on a coastal bank, so on and so forth, right next to a salt marsh. So those were the sorts of projects that, in my opinion, require a notice of intent.
Okay. So on this, and this is pure interpretation. I'm throwing it at you. So
Sure.
we're not, this isn't trying. So would that, under our current bylaw, would that, that 6-inch sort of thing, would that fly?
I think it may fly. Like I said, I'd have to see what we're talking about. And even if it weren't, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would require a notice of intent with an engineered plan. There's going to be these in-between projects that would just require an RDA, which doesn't require an engineered plan. You know what I mean? So it just depends on the scale. And are you referring to a specific actual project, or was that just a hypothetical?
No, I started thinking about, but let's think about some of the parking lots that we have, right, that are near the beaches or by them.
Yeah, like
about Swift or
Swiss
even
Nick. Yeah,
Swiss Nick. Swiss Nick is. I always thought you were saying. But what? So let's. I'm thinking about
Shell Point. We're
Shell
losing
Point.
Shell
Yeah,
Point.
yeah. What do you do on something like that? Because you can see it's starting to deteriorate along
Yeah.
the sides. And I'm
Sand is
guessing
eroding underneath the pavement, and we're about to lose the pavement.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and those are tricky ones for sure. I mean, certainly it's an existing parking lot, so I would say the commission should allow it to be repaired. Whether or not it was handled as an RDA or notice would be, I think, the subject of what is the extent of the repairs. Is it going to be a complete removal of pavement and replacement, or is it just going to be some patchwork? Those are the things that I think need to be understood, because it's not just the the nature of the project, but how is the project done? What safeguards are being put in place to protect the resource areas? Those are the things that the commission also has to look at when we're talking about reviewing a project, you know? But yeah, that's a tricky one, but I would say that's something the commission could work with the town and come up with something to make it work, because it is an existing feature.
And I'm going to shock you all. I'm not an engineer. So when I say I'm like, well, maybe you can put sheathing around it and people look at me in horror. So
Oh, that could be a nice alternative to prevent the pavement from collapsing and, yeah. Okay.
so thank you for that, Dave.
Sure.
I think this points out one of the issues regarding the regulations is that there's so many different variations and iterations of projects and impacts that it's not clear from the start what the outcome is going to be. So the town is, the people coming forward with projects are at a loss as to what their needs are that they have to apply to the project that they're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. So I guess we'll have a discussion at the May 5th meeting as to how we might vote to support or not support this amendment change. But there's no question there has to be better communication, honestly, between all parties for all projects that impact the town and our wetlands. So
I thank you all for your time. Thank you, Dave, for
Thanks, Derek.
So
thanks, Dave. Thanks,
Derek,
Derek.
Derek, let's chat another time, and go over some of these things.
all right, absolutely.
All right.
I think
Take
we
it
know.
easy.
I think we know where each other are in the building. So
All right.
So, thank you. We're off to Article 10, the wetland bylaw amendment for Wareham Village 1, adding letter D.
Yeah, let me just pull that language up.
Pull it up,
here.
because I'm not going to read it. Might be easy if just people read it on the screen as opposed to me speaking it. Because I do see Danny Warren and I do see Dunham on the line. Is there anybody else that's here for this project? I don't see any other public on here other than Danny and probably Angie. Okay. Make it a little bigger, please.
Bigger? Okay,
And-
hold on.
Don't make it too big though. I don't want I don't want one letter sitting in the screen.
Got it. Thank you. So Ken, can you talk about this one?
Sure. The concept here is that there's a restriction of a no-build zone for 50 feet in commercial and industrial areas. It restricts the construction absolutely with some variations that are waivers that are possible, but apparently haven't been applied to build within the 50-foot zone in the commercial area. Originally, this bylaw was written so that it was the WV1 and the OV1, the onset village as well too. I was convinced when you said that the pier was structures on the pier would be exempted from the restriction of setback requirements. So just change it to the WV1. We're in an urban environment. We want public access on the water. We want activities that able to reach to the water. And so that means structures in an urban area like the village is. The intent here was to say that that this setback would not be applied overall. It would not be an absolute in the WV1, but would be reviewed in accordance with the standards of the bylaw and the impacts of and the interests that Wetlands Protection Act specifies. So that it's a case-by-case basis rather than an absolute setback restriction. So we're starting from the idea of permission if they can prove their case as to the impacts to the resources.
Okay. Now, there's no question that this was written to take care of the Danny Warren project down at the old Greer lumber. No ands or buts about it. But you've also said that there could very well be some other projects being touted for Wareham Village that goes from the condominiums all the way up and including the Tremont Nail. One of the plans we saw for Tremont Nail included a clearing of the land over the wetland for a park and a walkway. Now, do we know that that land was filled in with title, that title land had been filled in as to why it's wet, or, you know what I'm talking about, next to the freight building? You saw the plan.
I know what you're talking about. It's south of the freight building.
Yeah, the
It's not south of the
redevelopment
freight
plan
building.
had a nice park with a couple trees and a walkway, but that is underwater virtually all the time.
Yeah, there's still work to be done on that master plan. That's not the final plan that's going to be built. And in fact, I would like to schedule a time before the Conservation Commission on your agenda so that the Bentley companies can present their plan and get some feedback from you as to what kind of considerations they should be looking at in the redevelopment plan for the Tremont Nail Factory.
Yeah,
There's still wetland resource issues that have to be addressed in any construction that happens in the area. All I'm saying is we don't start with an absolute restriction against development within the 50-foot zone. What we do is we look at as in the performance standards of the wetlands regulations and consideration for impacts to the resources. So in that way, we're able to design for public access and activities that reach to the water and happen along the water as well.
So this would include the walkways that are being planned to go over the railroad tracks for people to go crabbing. It could very well include the boardwalk being anticipated from the Tremont Nail down to Merchants Way, that type of thing.
That's correct.
But we currently in conservation have the ability to waiver the 50-foot setback. What this does here, it makes it more public that we could waiver.
Well, Sandy, I think currently there's certain exemptions called out where the town could waiver, and some of those would apply to some of these areas. For example, all along Merchants Way is obviously already paved and altered, and so work could be done within that area that's within the 50-foot. Some of the other area between, let's say, Tremont Nail and there is different. So that's an area where currently you don't really have the ability to waive the 50-foot because there's no reason to waive it in terms of any exemption in the town bylaw.
Which is why they put public access into this bylaw.
Right, so just above this in item B, you see projects requiring Chapter 91 licenses, so on and so forth, is an exemption to the 50-foot currently.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't really make a difference to those sorts of projects, but it would make a difference to projects that are not, let's say, projects that require Chapter 91 licenses, but that would be within the 50-foot. So in that case, it would make a difference.
One of the issues that we're trying to address in the downtown is trying to attract developers in to invest money in the community and take some of those derelict buildings and shuttered buildings and turn the spaces around and make something happen in the village. To do that, we have to have risk associated with the regulations, least amount of risk available, but encouraging designers and for these developers to look at what makes the most sense for the development of the property rather than take what is actually an arbitrary setback requirement to apply to the project.
But most everything on Merchant's Way is already disturbed and therefore would not be subject to the 50-foot. It's
It
the
would-
area,
It would be subject to the 50-foot. Everything's subject to the 50-foot now.
but it's already disturbed. It's already paved.
Right, it is. And so then there shouldn't be any problem in saying
No.
that 50-foot does not apply.
Well,
So, but-
that's what I think Sandy's saying. That language already exists. I'm going to pull up the
But-
existing bylaw right now.
But what I'm thinking about is if you take the land from the old feed and grain store all the way down to just before, all the way down to Elm Street, that 50-foot could very well be could be ignored by any development that could happen along that way, right?
Yeah.
Behind CVS.
Right, and that's exactly where you wouldn't want to have just a free-for-all because, let me just get to where this.
Well, there's, come to
I
think,
don't think we should call it a free-for-all.
but come to think of it, there would not be a whole lot of stuff that could be done because the railroad track is between any of that property and the river.
Absolutely.
There's not much of a strip there. I know we had some issues when they put in the Mystic Mattress place. They worked behind the Fitzgerald property where the old fish store used to be.
Can you still see the screen or am I not sharing it?
Well, I'm seeing words that have been crossed out. Those are the exceptions.
Yeah, so this is the way this is set, you're seeing right here is this is what is actually the town bylaw right now. This was just a version that struck out some language and proposed the new language, and this is how it actually got voted. But I didn't have a clean version, but what you see that's not crossed out is now currently what is in effect. So if you read A, it says redevelopment of sites that are currently paved or altered with other impervious surfaces within the buffer zone is listed as an area that the commission can waive or reduce the no activity zone. So again, anything along Merchant's Way is already something that can be permitted to be built on because it's already paved and so forth. So there's not a 50-foot hard setback in that case.
So there's no particular reason to have the 50-foot setback in place. One of the things that I would be interested in is knowing where else you have waived the requirement for the 50-foot setback, so I can tell about what would be the basis for making that application.
Mm.
So any of the things that where it's potentially waived are just listed right in the town's wetland bylaw.
No, I mean, where have you actually waived? Where have you actually waived?
Examples.
An example. I mean, we've had lots of projects that where there's already been existing paved areas where we've permitted projects. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example.
Well, it isn't just the 50, it's the 30-foot. Someone already has a deck and it's falling down. We waived the 30-foot no work zone because it already been disturbed to replace their deck or their steps.
Yeah, we've allowed people to build additions or structures in areas on their property that are already paved if it's within that area, because it's already altered in that way. I'm trying to think of a commercial
But
situation.
I can't remember a commercial activity that we waived the 50-foot. Because we don't get a lot of commercial, most everything is residential.
Yeah, and a lot of the commercial we get is in undisturbed new sites. So I can do a little research, Ken, to see what we've done, but I'm sure we've had some projects that have proposed work that we've allowed to be done within existing disturbed areas.
Existing disturbed, yes.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to ask the questions from the board. Ron?
I mean, I think that, we're, kind of walking a fine line here in talking about changing. I think we have the ability to make exceptions, but also, talking about a lot of Wareham Village where it's already disturbed land, that so it doesn't necessarily apply. I think I think the statement that bothers me the most is that, we want to attract developers. Well, let's attract them the way they need to be attracted. If they can't deal with, certain restrictions or working on getting a waiver, then, maybe they're not necessarily what we want here in town. I don't think that we should make changes just to attract people to come to want to build in this town. I think they have the ability to do a lot with Wareham Village without having to, get rid of this, this 50-foot, I mean, I don't know what the, if there's, projects that are, lying in wait that, if there are, maybe they want to be shared with us so we kind of know what they are, or if it's kind of just, we want this to happen and then we can talk about, projects and certain developers that might be coming in or want to do things. So my concern is I don't necessarily think that it's a change that needs to be made. I was a little taken back by when it was first presented to us. So that kind of was a little bit upsetting at how it wasn't given time for us to think about it. I'm glad that we've had some time to at least have a conversation, but not really much before it went to the selectmen to be put on the warrant. So I don't think that, most of what we would be looking at down in Wareham Village would need a change, because it's, like I said, at the end of the day, it's already stuff that's been done, it's been paved. I think a lot can be done without having to waiver on what the town has had in place for, as many years as it's been in place.
Michael?
Again, I'm kind of on the same page with Ron here. It seems like if there's already bylaws and what else already in place, why bother running around and just basically just utilize with what we got. That's all. Thank you.
Did we lose Sandy?
Did we?
She moved off screen, I think.
Okay.
I knocked her out of the park, I guess.
I have a question, Dave. Is the language regarding the use of airspace still in this bylaw change?
Let me go back to that. I don't believe it is, but let me just go back to that.
I'll take charge until Sandy comes back. I guess that's my responsibility, right?
Yes.
Here she is. She's coming.
I see her popping back up on the screen.
Yeah.
I don't see her. I just saw her light up. There she is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Were you just testing? Were you testing me, Sandy?
No, sorry, package delivery.
What'd you get me?
I have no idea. It's Alan. He got a new car.
Oh.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Ron,
so
were you?
I don't
This
think
the entire thing, Dave?
yeah, this is the entire thing. So there's nothing that talks about air rights or anything like that. It's just generally to address that
I
particular.
thought I read that in the proposed bylaw change. Am I incorrect, or was it removed?
No, there is a new Wareham Village 1R that's being proposed at this town meeting, but I believe it's being pulled, and that had to do with the air rights.
Okay.
And
So
that's
not part of this at all.
not part of this. No.
Okay.
Sorry, did Michael have anything?
That was it.
Carol, that was it?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Elissa?
I don't know. It just seems to me that the whole of, they pulled the Onset Village exemptions and all that. Wareham is in the same position as somebody mentioned at the end. All of the land has been disrupted. I think that as a group, conservation has to protect the area if people are working on it. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know why developers are saying it's difficult. If in fact all of the land has been disturbed, then the Conservation Commission has the ability to allow companies to come in, or stores or whatever, all the way down the line. I mean, even the other side of the tracks has been disturbed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything is disturbed in that area. And we really don't like what it looks like now, and that it's not doing anything for the town now. So, you'll have to protect certain things if we're going to work in that area. But as far as I can see, it's all just like the Onset Village.
Yep, it's all been altered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about those sorts of zones, you're talking about Merchants Way and all that. So that all, if there were projects to want to redo those buildings or make changes or expansions, all that, in my opinion, would be permittable because it's all existing building and paved area.
Exactly.
When you're talking about the stretch between Tremont Nail and, let's say, downtown, well, that's a different story because that's not disturbed and paved area. So,
But
those are the.
It's all disturbed, Dave.
Yeah, but that's not what the bylaw speaks to. It speaks to paved areas. So
But
that.
Wait a
Don't
minute.
we have the right to issue waivers for that type of project?
Yeah.
Anything between Tremont Nail and Merchants Way?
No, not currently under the existing bylaw. Because let me get back to the language of the bylaw so you can read what it says.
It has to be disturbed.
It has
Oh,
to be
okay, only if
not-
it's already previously disturbed.
It's
Well, previously disturbed meaning paved and things like that. Let me
Or-
just,
doesn't say that in here. Right,
Yeah.
you were right on it, David, where it was saying that previously altered, filled, or changed. It doesn't say paved.
well,
No,
I think,
he's
I
going
think
to
you're looking
the,
at something different there. Let me just
he's
get
going
back to
to the
this.
existing bylaw we have that talked about it being a foundation or paved.
Okay, so here we go.
Could you zoom in? Thank you, Dave.
So A right here, redevelopment of sites that are currently paved or altered with other impervious surfaces. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. We're not just talking about an area that 200 years ago might have been disturbed to be a farm field and now it's all back to natural vegetation. So
Oh, okay.
that's what we're talking about here. So like I said, Merchants Way, other areas that have been paved over with buildings or parking lots, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, so would a change in this bylaw, would this new bylaw change allow us to grant waivers for the areas that are previously undisturbed?
So
from Fremont Nail to wherever.
if this change were to be allowed, then there wouldn't be a restriction, so there wouldn't be anything to waive. In other words,
Okay,
they'd
they'd
just be
able
allowed,
to do it.
they'd just be able to do it within the 50 foot.
No, it just says previously altered with structures and or fill such as
Yes.
filled tidal lands, bulkheads, piers, marina
Right.
facilities, parkland. So right now, if you were to take a look where the old feed and grain store used to be, that was a previously,
Disturbed
Pervious-
area.
yes. But if you go to the next house down, who has a treed backyard, that would not be part of the waiver,
Okay,
even
Okay.
under even under this bylaw.
okay,
Well, I think it would, Sandy.
Yeah.
And again, that's okay if that's what everybody wants. I think this would permit work to be done within the 50-foot because it just basically eliminates it from the WV1. There would be no
Right.
more 50-foot buffer setback.
But it doesn't mean that the work would be allowed. It depends on what the work is and how it impacts the
Okay,
resources.
right.
That's
Right.
correct. Yeah, what Ken said is correct. I'm just pointing out to everybody, just so they're clear, that there wouldn't be a 50-foot. You certainly still would have other rules that might apply to a given project that the project would have to comply with, as Ken said. So it doesn't just mean an outright anything goes, but it just means the 50-foot setback would not be in place in that zone.
So that empty lot across from the church that Deacon's owns could very well be allowed to, never mind, would have to be considered for whatever project there might be there. Okay. So I need to go. Kwame, any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I actually read and digested what Ken wrote a couple weeks back, and I see, why he needs to, well, what needs to be changed in order to have developers come in. But looking into the future, do we actually know? Do they actually have some kind of master plan yet, or it's just trying to get something in stone so they could develop? Do we have any master plan? What's coming?
There's one project on the southern end that's being worked on right now, and we have an idea about what's necessary for parking and structures, so we get an idea of what would be needed. The rest of Merchants Way and the section of Main Street, we have two different developers that are looking at it and considering aggregating and committing property, but don't have any hard plans as yet as to what's going to go on there.
Okay, so it looks like Dave is going to be really heavily involved with some of the projects moving forward, because it just seems like a lot of density factors could be coming into play, especially if it's parking or building or any kind of restrictions that are within that 50-foot buffer there. So, but thank you. Yes, and this will be the general public will know about this actually when it does come in, right?
Yes.
Yes, it would.
Denise, any questions?
I'm just trying to take this all in, but if you already have the ability to waiver, why would you want to put something in place that would cut out your ability to have control over the conservation part of the whole thing?
I think what they're trying to do is find something that's more approachable by developers. Make the town feel like, look a little more welcoming, I think.
Okay, so you have the ability to waiver, and they know you have the ability to waiver, but you want to make them feel better by saying you don't need us to waiver.
Well, I think to clarify, we only have the ability to waiver currently in certain given circumstances. It's not that you can waiver whenever you feel like it. And so I think that's what the intent of the proposed change is, to try to put forth, so that way there is more latitude to allow things without worrying about whether they need to be waived or not.
It
Okay.
expands what we can waiver.
Okay, I see.
So I think something that, if I want to think here, if I want to go back to our last special town meeting that we had, we had a developer that was looking to push a zoning change here in town. Didn't really come with a plan, or had a plan but pulled the plan back. I kind of see similarities here. We wanna make a change without really knowing what the plan might be for that said area. So I look at it the same way. Like, if we don't want to do it for one, why would we want to do it for the other? There's really no difference to me. Like, we don't have a plan. We talk about wanting to attract developers. Ken says that there are a couple of developers that might be interested. So I kind of look at them similarly. Like, we want change, but we don't want it because we're afraid of what might be there. So my feeling on that is we just need to wait until maybe there's a plan, and then maybe we think about, supporting some type of a change, whether it's changing the 50-foot or not changing it. But I just think that without knowing what the possibilities are, we would be kind of doing a disservice to what we already have in place by just saying, hey, here you go, and not have, more control than I think we need to have.
Well,
Thank
do
you.
have an example with Danny Warren's project on the old Greer lumberyard.
What was that? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Danny Warren has a plan for the old Greer lumberyard, the Baker property as it was known more recently, beside British Landing. He has a plan that he's developed for that puts structures within the 50-foot setback so that he can get the parking lined up on the street side of the property. His plan would be impacted by the 50-foot setback restriction. It would not be unusual to see other issues coming up in the development of Merchants Way as well.
Okay,
So are you saying that Danny Warren's plan won't be passed unless this is passed?
No, the actions that he has to the permits that he has to go for include
Right.
site plan review, special permits, and Conservation Commission.
Right.
He's got a number of hurdles to cross to cover and make his project happen.
Right.
One of the aspects of it that he shows by the plan is that the 50-foot setback has an effect on the potential for development that he has on the site.
It's got a potential, but I mean, until we have the ability to, we've kind of bet on one piece of his project already, and we've already approved a piece of his project. So it's a potential, yeah, but without having a project in front of us, I mean, we can't say yes, no, what's right, what's wrong. I mean, we have to see it to be able to, see what is and what isn't. So potential is a big word. It could be or it couldn't be. I mean, but we don't know that until we actually see something.
Well,
okay.
Isn't that also a project that we have the ability to issue a waiver for?
I would say so. There isn't part of that land that wasn't developed, built on, foundation on, parking on, etc.
So this bylaw is really not going to make any change for that particular project because we already have the ability to grant a waiver.
That is my understanding.
How difficult is it to get a waiver? I mean, what kind of a process is that?
Just to vote in conservation.
That's it.
It's up to us. It's up to
However-
us based on the project.
However, we don't oftentimes go against the rules and regulations. And that's probably that's sort of where this comes in. We're not really known for being very flexible.
Okay.
But we could be.
Oh, we could be, yes, Cindy, especially us.
Yes, especially since it's already previously disturbed land.
Well, yeah, but we have yeah, exactly, whatever.
Yep. So, all right. Is there anybody online in the public who'd like to comment on Article 10? Danny? Nope. He was here.
It seems like
Oh,
they-
Danny, you're muted.
Andy, did you have a comment?
Can't hear you.
No,
He-
Andy.
Left.
I am preferring to wait for Mr. Warren to speak. He's probably in the process now of arranging for his microphone to be unmuted. I would prefer for him to speak first, please, respectfully.
Danny's trying to find the.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yes.
you got-
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I got it, Jane. Thank you. I just got to be blunt about it. If we have to stay and live with the 50 feet, we understand that, but that will absolutely kill the project.
Right.
We understand.
I know that. I just had to say that because there's no other way to park.
Right.
Today, I approached the hospital again to get well, maybe in a few years, we might sell you our parking lot. So, okay, that's all I want to say. And the other thing I got to say is you guys do a good job. I mean, especially the ringmaster. I watched the whole thing, and you guys have a difficult job to do and a tight rope to walk. So you do a good job of it. That's what I'm saying.
And to be honest, with Danny approached me well before he purchased the land, and we walked it. And I told him what the rules and regulations were for conservation. So it was not unknown to him of our 50-foot setback. I mean, we walked every piece of that lot even before he purchased it. So I
That's
shared
correct.
with him what the issues and concerns were. So, okay, I just wanted it out there that he and I did have a conversation well before he even purchased it. So, and Angie, anything to add?
Nope, that's absolutely true. We did do the walk, and you did explain everything to me.
Thank you.
So I went in with eyes wide open and high hopes.
I hope.
Good. Keep
Is there
them.
anybody else on the public who'd like to comment on Article 10? Yes, Angie.
I would like to express my complete support behind both ends of Main Street projects that are being proposed. Of course, I don't have any details about your end of the conservation restrictions and regulations for that part in back of Tremont Nail. So I'd like to speak about that. First of all, Tremont Nail, the Bentley Company, I've seen their plans. And outside of the conservation, that's on you folks, not on my wheelhouse. However, the rest of it, I would like to see that move forward so that as Historical Commission Chair and Historical Society President, on both perspectives, I'm in full support of what they are proposing there. On the other end of Main Street, where Danny Warren is proposing his project, I've seen and discussed with Mr. Warren what he is proposing as well. And I can tell you that from my conversations with Mr. Warren, he has not only been flexible and visible to the public, having 2 weekends that he had open house, so to speak, there on the property for public input. If I'm not mistaken, he had over 500 people supporting his project.
Over 500 signatures, yes.
And not only that, I believe that in, again, conversations with Mr. Warren, he is diligently pivoting on a daily basis almost to make something that will bring great value, a great asset to the downtown area. Even as recent as the past week and a half, I believe it was, bringing in more assets that will be a huge impact there on improving Main Street. We all know what was going on with that property, that it was a shambles. And as you have said, all of you, each and every one, that property has been disturbed for what, 3 centuries now? So that being said, I just want to support Mr. Warren's his approach, that he is approachable and that he is willing to change and make it happen in the proper way. Being in the business of having a company that is international and ecologically based, I find that you'll find him very easy to work with and to talk to. And so I'm supporting both projects on each end. And I'm hoping that this can move forward. I know that you're all working hard. Many people in the community don't realize, and having been on town committees, people in the public don't generally realize how many hours behind the scenes that we put in for the benefit of the community. And I know that's what you folks have as your bottom line. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Angie. Is there anybody else that would comment on this? If not, if everybody's, if we've exhausted everything and we can put it on the May 5th agenda, if there's nothing else.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Has he asked for a waiver?
No, we've not seen any plans. The only plans that have come for us was the plans to redo the marina. There is a concrete walkway on that property. He's only been approved work to be done on the water side of that. We have seen nothing on the way of a plan. I know he's working on it. There's been conceptual plans worked on that says I want to put a building here and a parking area and another building here, but we have not seen anything to comment on.
All right.
But
So
just-
until he can give us a notice of intent, there's just the possibilities, but nothing specific.
Sandy, could I speak again?
Yes, please, Danny.
Okay, thank you. I've got something ready to show you, but the problem is I can't get the drainage and all that stuff done. And they're just getting ready to start to work on that. And I'm saying, how long are we gonna ask these guys to stay in the dark? I can show you where all the buildings will be and what they will look like. And then that other stuff GAF has got to figure out, because I don't know how to do that.
Yep. You're right.
But
I
I
mean,
can-
we need the full plan that shows us your stormwater, that shows us your sewer line,
Yep.
that shows you utilities, all those things that have to be put in under the ground. That's part of what we look at.
Yeah, so I got to go beat them up some more, and I will.
Yep.
But just to make it clear, the program that he's laid out for the property and the way it's the conceptual plan that's been prepared, it would require a waiver of the 50-foot setback on the waterfront.
Yeah, I think we understand.
So maybe Mr. Pichette, we may ask Danny to come before us and show us the conceptual plan, just to give us a feeling for what is being proposed on that property, not a true engineering notice of intent. Would the
Yeah,
committee
I
like?
mean, that's certainly fine to do as a discussion. There's no problem with doing that.
Yep. Yeah,
That would be a great
So-
idea.
I mean, it won't be a
I'd love to
public,
do it.
it won't be a public hearing or anything like that. So it would be just a discussion of, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Take a look at it and we can discuss it, but it won't be a public hearing on it. Therefore, it won't have to be advertised in the paper. Okay?
Can we get together in person with our mask to do that? It's a lot to show on the Zoom.
Yay, I would love that.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
me too.
So I've had my shot.
So do you want a meeting on site?
We could do it on site, or we could do it someplace where it's not. Yeah, let's do it on site. We're getting good weather now. Or we could
Yeah,
do
I
it.
think, I think on site might give us a better visual of being able to walk the plan that you have
Yeah.
right now. That's my
I agree.
opinion of it. I mean, I'm only one of 150 of us committee members. Just kidding, not that many of us, but I think walking the site and talking the plan with you might give us a better visual
Yeah.
of what you're
Because-
trying to propose.
Yeah,
That,
great
help.
idea.
that did help when we walked the site on the marina component.
Yeah, let's do that then. Let's pick a good
So-
sunny day.
Can you
Can you
base
work with Mr. Bichette to find some type of time frame, and then we'll put it out to committee as to what they can come when they're available? As opposed to, it will not be a formal meeting. It will be an on-site visit. There will be no decisions made or anything like that. It'll just be, hey, we're
Make-
meeting there to
A
look at
discussion.
a discussion point. Yes.
Right,
Yep, that'd be great.
can you base a waiver on that, or would something else have to be filed?
Oh, no, we need the formal notice of intent.
Yeah, need the full plan to be able to even think about, making any decisions.
So, Danny, it might be worthwhile to put a couple stakes in the ground to show us where you plan to put the buildings.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna do that.
Okay, so anything else? So reach out to Mr. Bichette and he'll, a good time frame, and then we'll ask the committee members, give us a couple options, and we'll see which ones most of them can attend. Okay,
That'd be great.
that's it.
Thank you very
That's it,
much.
everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
I need a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing.
Hearing,
Second,
We
I
didn't
have
know.
a motion to close the hearing in second. Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
yes,
yes.
Elissa,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Sandy, we're closed. At what time is it?
7:33.
35.
Oh, thank you folks for hanging in there. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
And you'll still have 30